Welcome to the Red Diamond Wargame Podcast. We are your hosts, Major Kurt Locker Honig, and Captain Victor Apollo 6 Tibera. This is the inaugural episode in which we will discuss the purpose of the podcast, our experiences being teammates and partners in the Commandant's Cup, and then what we hope to achieve from our experience at the Commandant's Cup and going forward through this podcast. Please note that all opinions expressed are entirely those of the participants and do not reflect the United States Marine Corps, their units, or any other organizations of which they are a part. All right, so to kick things off, a quick background for me. I commissioned out of Texas A&M University in 2010. I joined the fleet as a rifle platoon commander with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, and I participated in a combat deployment to the Helmand Province, Sangin, Afghanistan. I was successful in bringing all my Marines home, became a weapons platoon commander, and then ended my active duty, switched over to the reserve side, and had the privilege to continue serving as a weapons platoon commander, Company XO, with now Bravo Company in 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines out of Bossier City, Louisiana. So in my time in the reserves, I've grown from being the company executive officer, weapons platoon commander. I've served as the 123's 81 millimeters platoon commander. I've also been the Bravo, coming back to Bossier City, Louisiana, been the Bravo Company commander, in which we were mobilized in support of Operation Allies Welcome. So got to actually come onto orders, air quotes, right, deploy, work full time for 123. And that's actually the first time I got to meet Captain Tibera, which he'll mention in his background. Coming back, I was offered the role of the operations officer. So I took the reins of 123 as the OPSO, preparing and executing ITX for TAC 23, in which Captain Tibera got to serve as one of my company commanders. More recently, getting into wargaming, while I've been participating in the weekend seminar version of Command and Staff, I saw a Mar Admin for the Top Tactics tournament and figured wargaming sounded cool, so I'm going to try this thing out. And towards the end, realized that Apollo 6, my former company commander, was also kicking butt. In fact, did really, really well in that tournament. And so I found myself in the Top Tactics tournament volunteering because they needed a spot filler for a war plan tournament. And next thing I know, I'm also in a Napoleon at War tournament, all that going on almost simultaneously. And then finally, this opportunity to participate in the Commandant's Cup comes up. And before I even had the chance to reach out, I had Apollo 6 reaching out saying, hey, sir, what do you think about teaming up? Because it's a partner competition. So now we've had the opportunity to participate in the Commandant's Cup. We had a lot of pretty awesome experiences in doing all this. And we're really looking forward to taking that experience and communicating it to the fleet, both FMF and the Marine Forces Reserve, so that we can get more and more Marines participating in wargaming. But that's my background. That's how I've come to be interested in wargaming, what I'm trying to accomplish in it. Victor, tell me about your background.
All right. So I joined the Marine Corps in 2015. Got to the fleet with 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. I started off as a FIS leader there. So I was able to go to the fires coordination course, fire support coordination course. While with 1-1, I was able to deploy to Okinawa, Japan. Also got to do, in preparation for that, attend raid planners and raid leaders course. So in a way, my first intro into wargaming, I would say, if I were to track my roots all the way back, was planning raids and figuring out how to get from ship to shore, hit the raid, and then come back to the ship. Once I left 1-1, I was at the 1st Marine Regiment for a little bit as the executive officer for headquarters company, whilst pending my orders to Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego. Got there, did a series commander tour, and then transferred to the reserves as well. I transferred immediately after leaving active duty. So I went to 2nd Battalion, 23rd Marines. I was the HNS XO, then moved over to Echo Company as the XO, mobilized in support of Operation Allies Welcome, which is where I met you, Major Honig. So that's where our kind of paths crossed, and our wargaming partnership, we could say, started sometime around there. but eventually got extended, went overseas to Kosovo in support of Operation Allies Welcome as well. Came back, took over as company commander for Apollo Company 123, or served under, as Major Honig stated, him as an OPSO. Got a good experience there. Did my 2 years there. While I was there, I was able to attend AMWIC, so the Advanced Maneuver instructor course, which was really beneficial in my planning, and I think I attribute a lot of my wargaming, I wouldn't say expertise, but my wargaming tactics to that, understanding the thinking enemy, or as we called it, modeling the thinking enemy. Since then, I've moved on from Apollo Company. I'm now with the Tactics Training and Exercise Control Group here in 29 Palms as a Coyote. Currently a basic maneuver Coyote. I will be moving to the 3 shop to take over some stuff as the 3 Bravo in TTCG's 3 shop. Yeah, what got me into wargaming was honestly a random Mar admin that I had seen for the Top Tactics tournament, and I was like, hey, I think I can do that. So got my application in, got my registration in, went and competed in that for a while. That was a really good learning experience. There was definitely a learning curve of learning the mechanics of wargaming, learning how to work the computer systems, things like that, especially for someone like me who's not too savvy with the technical aspects. But once I got past that, understanding how to actually play the game and the rules of the game, I think I was able to do a pretty decent job wargaming. Fast forward a couple months, the Commandant's Cup comes up, see that it's a 2-man tournament, and I was like, man, I don't have a teammate. Talked to Major Honig. We'd briefly talked here and there. He'd mentioned that he was in the Top Tactics tournament as well. So reach out. I was like, hey, sir, do you want to be my partner for this? We competed, got the invitation to the Commandant's Cup finals, and then we traveled out got to spend a week in Washington, D.C. wargaming, further improving our wargaming capabilities, and got a lot to look forward to in the next year and possibly the coming years, depending on where life takes us. So looking forward to some more wargaming with you, sir, and discussing this on this podcast and see what we can do to help the Fleet Marine Forces, help Marines, and help people in general understand the importance and the value of wargaming within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So Modern Day Marine was the setting for the finals at the Commandant's Cup, which, if you haven't been, is incredibly impressive to see. All the different vendors filling this convention center with all the different things that they're trying to sell to the Marine Corps. And then we were over in the Objective 1 Wargaming Pavilion. That's where the Commandant's Cup was being held. And it's a real tribute to the hard work that retired Colonel Tim Barrick, the Marine Corps University Director of Wargaming, has done. So this is only the second year that the Commandant's Cup has been into play. And one of the interesting notes is that you and I both saw the Top Tactics Mar Admin and got interested in this and started participating. So that was less than a year from realizing that there was a wargaming cloud being hosted by Marine Corps University, seeing the Marine Corps University Fight Club sort of getting stood up and beginning to grow. There was no Mar admin for the Commandant's Cup, but can you imagine like how many more people might have like just tried to throw their hats in the ring? There was already something like 110 participants, like 55 teams across the Marine Corps, the Allies, Joint Force, all trying to participate in this. What did you think about how like that whole preliminary round went to get us to Modern Day Marine in the first place?
Yeah, I think it was pretty extensive. I remember coming home from work and having to go in and do my turns, prep for that against opponents that I've never seen or met, or from other countries, other services. And I just remember being not really overwhelmed, but just a little bit like taken back of like, and these are the living, breathing opponents and enemies that we could be facing in future conflicts, who like-minded individuals. So seeing that, and then like, okay, we're all human. Every man has an OODA loop. So let's just work off the things that I know and that we know we've been taught through the Marine Corps, and try to apply those tactics and techniques.
Yeah, those preliminaries were lucky for us because it included Company Commander Modern, right? Then, so that's the name of the game that was in Top Tactics, and we could spend a whole other episode just diving into Top Tactics and our experience there. So we'll pin that discussion for later. But it did give us some familiarity with the game, and that let us be just that much more aggressive. We knew a little more of the buttonology, the functionality, and we had to do 2 rounds of that game in the prelims. How did those rounds go for you?
So for the Company Commander Modern, I think once we figured it out and taking a lot of things that you see on the news, you see in articles of what's going on with Ukraine and the implementation of technology and utilizing that to help you be successful on the battlefield, right? In the war game, and utilizing all the assets at your disposal, that really helped employing those assets and like, hey, not forgetting about, this unit has X amount of drones, right? And understanding being able to battle track internally what we have. It went well. I think I went 1-1 for the company commander. So lost to the American forces, and then won as the American forces, which we quickly realized the American forces, though not in reality or practical as of now, but looking forward in the future down the road of what we could be implementing in real life, the use of the drones was just overpowering for armor, and we see it playing out in real life out there in Ukraine and Russia. So yeah, that's how it went for me. Once I figured out like, hey, technology is the future, implementing this technology, I think figuring that out and having a good rep at it from Top Tactics, that really helped set us up for, I think, both of us for success. You gave me some good coaching points about the capabilities and limitations of what was on the battlefield and what we had to, and then a lot of looking up on the Odin site of furthermore what those capabilities could be. So a lot of time doing research of like, hey, this is all new stuff to me. I'm sure it's new to everybody else. Utilizing that to help me be successful there.
Yeah, it was interesting for me that one of the pieces of feedback that I was trying to communicate once we made it to the finals was, we had to do 2 rounds. So 2 turns is blue and 2 turns is red. 2 rounds. And for me it was against the same opponent. And I would have liked to have seen it mix up a little bit more, like give me someone else just in case. Because it turns out, my competition was Iron Marshall, who did make it to the finals as well. And so it turns into this little bit of like, oh man, like I was actually going against like a really good opponent. He knew what he was doing. He had a game plan, and you could see the scores from, other participants. It's like they participated against someone who didn't really understand the game. So they're racking up huge dominant wins, and it gets a little deceiving over everyone's capabilities. Like, is this person really that good, or is their opponent not so good? But I definitely take your point. It's quick to pick up on, don't shy away from the new technologies. That's one of the cool parts about Company Commander Modern, is that it does have one of the best depictions of the use of drones, and specifically how they could be used in the Marine Corps in the future. That was one of the great pieces of modern day Marine, was seeing one of the JLTVs that have been designed to carry medium size, the offensive precision fire munitions. So you see these OPF M's, exactly how they potentially could be employed on a JLTV. Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I've been playing that as a computer game. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I didn't realize, when you think of these one-way attack drones, you think of them as these small quadcopters, right? But what we got to see at Modern Day Marine was awesome. Like, oh, these things are actually pretty big and deliver a huge payload. So, yeah, that was good to put things into perspective.
Yeah, Company Commander Modern does that really well in terms of breaking down, at least for blue side. You do have, maybe it wasn't a quadcopter, but you do have small ISR only type drones. You also have your stalkers, which are a little bit bigger, and we kind of a little more familiar with those, but still both small. But those are not the loitering, destructive munitions. So actually getting to see some of those incorporated as well. So we got to see the full spectrum of the drone use there, and then also the counter UAS that you have to account for. So this was something that we're talking about employing tactics, right? The tactics of making sure that those drones can actually find their targets, and you don't let red have some type of system functioning that's able to shoot them down before they get to their targets.
Yeah, and using that Odin website is we hear, especially in the Marine Corps, about the Mattis Mark One and Mark Two and how they're employed in pairs, and you're like, okay, that sounds cool. They shoot down drones, but not really understanding how to employ them, or where are they at in your formation. Um, Doing a lot of research on that, and I learned once I got the information on that, I was able to better employ it in the Company Commander Modern. For the red side, still working a little bit on their anti-drone capabilities, and I'm sure the game will get updated a little bit more as it progresses.
Yeah, and that was one of the cool parts about Modern Day Marine again is that Code Wizards, they actually sent a couple of reps out there to help kind of collect feedback and see how we played the game, and it's going to help them make the game even better. I'm looking forward to in the future seeing some of that feedback get implemented. I'm curious to see which of which pieces of our feedback they're going to be able to really put in, and how quickly they're able to put them in, because it hopefully was something useful. There was a wide range of competitors that got to participate, and they all had some different feedback for us.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we.
I was not a great participant and did not provide the feedback in the timely manner, so I'll have to save it for next year.
Yeah, you just find a way back just to make sure you get a chance to fill out the questionnaire at the end of the tournament. No, I know Colonel Barrick appreciates all the feedback, but he recognizes. I mean, that guy is swamped as it is. He's trying to bring wargaming to the Marine Corps. Sometimes it feels single-handedly. He's got a team of 3, and he's trying to bring wargaming to Marine Corps University first and to the entirety of the Marine Corps second. So he's got a lot on his shoulders. And this is one of the small ways we can try to help him out. So next time we'll try to get that questionnaire in his hands as well. But that was only those 2 rounds of Company Commander Modern, but we also got to do the Flashpoint Campaigns Pro. What was your experience in the preliminaries with the Flashpoint Campaigns Pro?
So that one was actually my favorite game of the 3 games that we played, just because of the level of depth and planning that you put into it pays off. And you really helped me out with that game specifically, because at first it was overwhelming. I was like, I do not know how to do this. Then you gave me all the tips of the trade. I think you did all the legwork, and I was like, oh, okay, you just teach me how to do it now. You learn through fire, and then I'll just take on after that. The Flashpoint Pro is really good because, especially I think for us as you as a staff officer and me as an upcoming staff officer, the planning and using the McPP process, things like that, and understanding, like we talked about, using all the assets you have, and also tracking all the other warfighting functions that you have. It's not just, I think Company Commander Modern is more of just maneuver only, whereas Flashpoint, you have intel, you have logistics, you have fires, you have information to some degree, right? You really have to broaden your thinking and your scope. I think probably EWS and Amwick, and for you command and staff, helps out with that understanding. Doing a battalion landing, and planning that and understanding, and kind of makes you a little bit more understanding of what the BLT staff goes through when they're planning this as well. And it's made real easy for us in the Flashpoint campaigns. So you just click and then they do it. But the real time waiting of orders to be passed down from when you issued it really brings the game to life. So I think that was really good. And then setting up follow-on actions for units and being able to adjust the way they fight the enemy. Whether it's, hey, you're going to stay in place and die, or, hey, as soon as you take fire, you're getting off the X. All that customization of how your unit, how you're going to employ your unit, I really like that about that. Yeah, I think I was pretty successful on my Flashpoint. I think you didn't have the opponent that ever fired back at you.
No, in the prelims, that was too bad. It was I went through all the planning process and issued out all my orders, and then never got any additional turns to kind of test any of the different ideas and try anything new. My opponent fell out on me which was too bad.
Yeah, and one thing kind of take away from me is there's the gameism, and then there's like, would I do this in real life? So
Hmm.
kind of feedback of, or I guess something that us as war gamers and aspiring war gamers should take into account. You can gameism some things and sacrifice some units when it comes down to real life. Like you're not going to do that. So I try to stop myself from doing that, but then I also think about, hey, I got to win this match.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that it gets into a lot of the ethics and philosophy behind wargaming. And someone who does a great job in breaking all this down actually is Colonel Barrick. And he'll give you a very thorough breakdown of the value of wargaming, and has less to do with the ethics of like, well, would I do this or wouldn't I? And has much more to do with just the repetition, the thought process. Just like we wouldn't expect someone to only have a theoretical understanding of how to disassemble and assemble their weapon system. Right? And they're only going to gain that proficiency by physically doing it. They're going to do it until they can't get it wrong. And that's the kind of attitude that a lot of wargaming is meant to present. It has nothing to do with like, you've been exposed to this theoretical situation, now you know what to do. It's like, well, now we can expose this to you repeatedly. We can have you disassemble and reassemble this scenario in your mind so that when the situation does come up, it's a much faster calculus. You're not agonizing over the decisions. You've seen it. You have a comfort of what makes sense and what doesn't. And whenever you're sitting in the role of that MU commander, there might come a time when you're going to have to make a decision where some amount of assumed risk is going to be accepted. It's not just writing off a unit. I'm really hopeful that a MU commander would never do that, but recognizing that he's going to put this unit at extreme risk because it's necessary to achieve the overall objective of our purpose being there. So that's a huge part of, I mean, not that Flashpoint Campaigns does that in its entirety, but where Company Commander does a great job of putting you in that Company Commander's seat, and yet he's still pushing pieces all around the map. You're a MU commander now. You actually don't get to push all the pieces. You get to issue orders. And you can continue some of those orders down to like a company or even a vehicle like squad level, but that's at the sacrifice of time. That's going to slow you down. So you as the MU commander have to do all the good planning and issue quality orders that are going to carry out what you expect that battlefield to look like.
Yeah, and you just brought up a really good point about assessing risks, right? So I remember the specific example that I'm referring to is trying to have the enemy unmask their air defenses,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think at one point I'm like, hey, I'm just going to send an Osprey, fly it over the entire battlefield, and they're going to unmask their air defense. It worked. So, and that allowed me to then target their air defenses and then further follow on action. So you talk about the morals and the ethics of it. It's like, what when we're talking war, right? Not saying that we're going to sacrifice things, but it brings up a good thought process or a good think tank about it of like, how are we going to solve this problem? Especially doing a beach landing where the enemy is dug in. They've had time to set up their defenses. It does raise a good question of how do we crack this nut and in a way that protects our forces, puts them at least at risk, and is also morally and ethically sound.
All right, hold on. I'm going to pause this real quick. All right. Well, so we made it through 2 rounds of Company Commander Modern. We made it through a round of Flashpoint Campaigns, or at least we tried. My guy didn't make it. He fell out. But we did enough that we scraped our way into an invite into the Commandant's Cup at Modern Day Marine. So that was a lot of fun. We played 3 games there, another round of Company Commander Modern. We played another round of Flashpoint Campaigns Pro, but now we've added a tabletop game, Joint Tactics Arena. So for those that don't know, Joint Tactics Arena is an extension of the Operational Wargames system. Now, the Operational Wargames system was developed by Tim Barrick in conjunction with the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, and I believe with a civilian company as well. And it is, if you haven't played it, an exceptional game that really breaks down a high fidelity analysis of the joint and combined environment. And I think that concept carries over into his tournament version of Operational Wargame of OWS in Joint Tactics Arena. What was your experience like playing Joint Tactics Arena?
Okay, so the Joint Tactics Arena, we talk about the learning curve. I don't know if this was maybe a strategy by Tim to fuel the fire to bring more competitors and have us return next year. But I think for both of us, it was our first time seeing the game, learning how to play it. I pretty much learned how to play it during the competition. So the fueling of the fire, I think that definitely occurred. I'm like, okay, next year I'll know how to play this. I'm coming back with a vengeance because there's a lot more that I could do if I'd known the technical aspects of the game. So I actually played against, I forget his name, Major, but one of the top performers of the tournament.
Oh, Major Evers?
Yeah, they ended up winning it, right?
Yep, Matt Evers.
Okay, yeah.
And Chris Lau, Major Chris Lau. That's right.
Yeah, that's right, Major Evers. Yeah, ended up playing against him. His team ended up winning the entire tournament, but I'm not going to give myself credit for that and say I lost to the champ. Yeah, learning how to play, I really like that. I think it was described as a knife in a phone booth fight, or a knife fight in a phone booth. So yeah, I agree with that. There's just so much to take in at one time and learn. But that one really brought in the naval aspect and fighting, I think, more fireside. So a lot of missiles, like IDF type systems, and the naval side with even get a sub on that, which I thought was pretty cool. So that definitely fueled me to hey, I got to learn how to employ now naval aspects. A lot simpler to learn and play than Flashpoint, in my opinion. Not as simple as Company Commander Modern, though. I think that one is as simple as it gets. But yeah, it was a tough learning curve to play the game, especially in the heat of the moment of like, hey, you're in the finals, the championships. Here's a new game to learn how to play. But it did bring up a lot of interesting thoughts, and I think really brought out the purpose of wargaming, right? So about how we're going to go about this, how we're going to do our war games. Because I think if we would have played a Flashpoint or Company Commander or something similar version to that, maybe a different map, I don't think we would have got as much value out of the wargaming concept itself. So yeah, I don't think I did too great with that. So definitely have a little fire behind that and some vengeance to come back next year and perform and learn the game and hopefully get a copy. I know Colonel Barrick was saying that there was a copy coming out potentially this summer.
I'm keeping my ear to the ground. As soon as that thing becomes available, that's not a like I'm asking the unit to purchase that. Like I Kurt Honig will purchase a copy to have available. That way, if I can convince someone to give up a couple of hours, that we'll play a couple turns in a more real note. That Field of Fire, just like you said, like the best compliment I can give to Tim, and I told him is like I just spent 3 hours playing your game. I got my butt kicked, and all I want to do is reset the board and play it again. And that is how that game feels in a more professional sense, where Company Commander is a very tactical game. You're at the company command level incorporating all these different assets. And there's a lot to keep in mind. There's a lot to track. But Flashpoint campaigns, now you're looking at a MU commander. What are all the things that he's thinking about? What are the orders that he's issuing? Joint Tactics Arena, you're now a joint commander. You are working with multiple joint areas in that you have an air component, you have a maritime component, you have a multifaceted land component. You have tanks, you have infantry fighting vehicles, you have trucks, you have infantry. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can approach the solution to this problem. And it's completely mirrored. So just like a chessboard, but where a chessboard is just a certain number of spaces with different capabilities, now you're looking at an island with different beaches that can be assaulted, with airstrips that have to be protected, with cities that have to be either protected or invaded. It was a lot to wrap your head around in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, because you or your opponent can score points by taking cities or destroying units. So it kind of has the bigger, deeper understanding of kind of like what was going on in Iraq, Afghanistan. Win hearts and minds, right? Ideally, if you take the city or at the tactical strategic level, hey, we own this piece of terrain, right? So I think yeah, the multiple ways to win and gain an advantage on your opponent or the enemy. Yeah, it's just so like multi-dimensional. That game is like, the more I'm like thinking back to it, kind of some light bulbs are going off. It's so just multi-dimensional of how to win and gain an advantage on your opponent.
Yeah, so there's so many different ways to approach it, and I look forward to talking to some of the different competitors and finding out the method that they tried and what way would they like to try again. I know for me, I ended up doing my best to conduct an amphibious assault, and that's a pretty capable card. You can do a lot of very good things with an amphibious assault. There also has some pretty serious limitations to it. So it makes me think that maybe next time, instead of doing that, maybe I should hold off and do a division assault. Get lots of movement on the board, really force my opponent to think about a lot of different things. But I also expect to hear a lot of focus on the strike capability. I expect to hear a lot about the naval assets, a lot of the maritime strike capabilities. And I think that just has to do with the fact that a ship is worth so many points. So if you start sinking ships, you're going to really put your opponent in a hole, points-wise. Like, you're going to have to do a lot of damage to try to overcome that. So there's a lot of different things. Like, what would you like to do different the next time you play the game?
Yeah, so I was in my game, and probably shame on me as an infantry officer, focused on the strikes and the naval aspect and didn't do too much ground movement, which I went in there thinking, hey, I'm going to just focus on the ground because that's what I know, right? Then once I started learning how to play, I'm like, oh, we can do these strikes. Like, let me try to prep the battlefield. But then you have the counters, right? You have the counter battery, the counter missile or anti-air, all that stuff that you're like, okay, I can't do that. So we started off, we're basically just shooting missiles at each other, trying to destroy each other's, whether it's air defense, missile launchers, ground guys. So we did that for a while. And then it went into a full-on naval attack. But then we're like, all right, we're going to commit our naval forces. And then we had a naval engagement, which I lost because he had assets. He still had missiles left. So you only get the finite number of missiles to counter the incoming missiles. So I didn't have any counters left to protect my ships. He had a bunch of counters left to protect his ships. So when I went to shoot my missiles at him, they all pretty much got shot out of the sky, and then my guys were just left alone, unafraid out there with nothing to defend themselves. And then the time constraint, that kind of, I wish we would have not had such a short time. I think it was 3 hours, because I think things were really starting to heat up, and Major Evers definitely got the last punch thrown in on me. He did that division attack. I had a division attack ready. I was like, oh wait, I should probably start moving my land forces. So I had taken out all his air defense and his missiles. So I'm trying to move in, and then I'm trying to figure things. I'm still learning how to play the game. And
Yeah.
I'm like, then I remember, oh, I got my division card to play. And then he got the last turn, so he played his division card and then steamrolled through a bunch of cities that were undefended, that didn't have any ground units to defend them. So if it was like artillery or the missile battery, they would just immediately get overrun and you'd lose them. So not only do you lose the troops, he gains points from taking the troops out. He also gains points for taking the cities. So he put up a pretty good amount of points on me there. But yeah, I think another good part of it is that it was in person. It wasn't the computer version like the Company Commander and the Flashpoint. So it's if you like board games and Monopoly type stuff or Risk, as most of us play, it felt more like that. Like, hey, well, I'm playing a board game. I'm playing against my opponent. He's right here, compared to the Company Commander and the Modern and the Flashpoint Pro, which is like, I do my turn on a computer. I come back a couple days later and then see what he's done. But here it's like, okay, now I can really look him in the eye and try to gauge what's going on in his OODA loop and what his thought process is. So that value of the model thinking enemy, the living, breathing enemy, that Wargaming really brought that out, because there was times where I was in his OODA loop, and then there was times when he was outcycling me, 3 or 4 or 5 steps, which ultimately I think brought him the victory.
Yeah, I mean, and he and his teammate did really, really well. I mean, they did win the whole thing, and we were close to having an opportunity to strike at the top 4. You and I, points-wise, did extremely well in the Company Commander, and we did about middle of the pack on both the Flashpoint campaigns and the Joint Tactics Arena, maybe even a little bit lower on the Joint Tactics Arena. But that's one of those areas where it's like I would have loved an opportunity to make it to the Final Four, get another chance to test what I've learned in Joint Tactics Arena. We each had some almost awesome, I say almost awesome, we had some good individual accolades. I think you and I each got top 3 in Company Commander Modern or the Flashpoint campaigns. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think what prevented us from the finals was the Flashpoint, or not the Flashpoint, the Joint Tactics Arena. I think had we performed better, which is why I said that, have that little fuel of like, if I would have had, you and I had some time to play that offhand or whatever prior to, I think it would have been different, because I think Major Evers had seen the game before and knew how to play it, because at one point he was telling our moderator the rules of the game. Like, he had it memorized, and I'm like, oh man. I was like, so I just got to stick to my tactics. Like, I don't even know the rules. I'm having the moderator explain to me the rules. Major Evers explained to him the rules. So it was a weird interaction, but it was fun.
I'll have to ask Major Evers about his experience with JTA. I think he might, like me, have a little bit of OWS experience, and so I wonder if that's what he was referring to, or he might be like I know Lieutenant Colonel Eckert. He made it to the Commandant's Cup last year and walked away with one of the copies of JTA. Now I don't know how much he gets to brush up on it, but especially since Colonel Barrick is still working through some of the different mechanisms to the game, but I'm really looking forward to it being done to get my hands on a copy and get a couple more reps and sets on a truly compelling game.
Yeah, and then the rule book. Maybe he just read the rule book. That those 2 packets they gave us of the rules and stuff. Maybe he just read that and understood it better than I did. But yeah, that also brought up to me a thought process of who's the audience for these type of war games. And I think the Flashpoint Pro is probably more geared towards officers, senior guys with a little bit of experience, the company commander for anybody, and then the Joint Tactics Arena. Once guys, it's just like learning a new board game. Once you know the rules, your first time playing Monopoly, you don't know the rules, and then you learn it, and you're like, oh, I can play this with anybody. So I don't think that one is. I think that one can go all the way down to the lowest levels.
No, that's really exciting, because that's going to mean that Marines at all levels are going to have an opportunity to kind of see the bigger picture. It might not help them truly understand how to buddy rush a little bit better, or how to execute that rocket battle drill or frag battle drill a little better, but he'll understand that much more about, why is a specific unit going to be employed in an air assault or an amphibious assault. How does it all come together in the next big fight? Because the next big fight is going to include all those domains. It's going to include a strike component, a maritime component, land, air. That's all going to be a contributing factor. And there's only a very limited cyber and space components in Joint Tactics Arena. It only gets much more dramatic in OWS, but it's no less important for even a junior Marine to understand that those are things that are going to matter whenever they start fighting that next fight.
Yeah, I agree, and I think even if these junior Marines or guys who are new to the game or don't even have any military background at all, it's just a fun game. It's fun because like when you lose or something happens in the game that shifts the momentum, because the momentum can shift really quickly and it'll shift throughout, which is the telltale signs of just an overall good board game. Yeah, it's just fun. It was great.
Yeah, and I think so all of this has really led us to this discussion of, should more Marines be wargaming? And if the answer is yes, how do we get more Marines wargaming?
Yeah, so we talk about that TTCG a lot. Like guys bring it up and they're like, Marines need a wargaming. We see it out at the ranges, range 410 Alpha, range 400. And those ranges haven't changed in as long as probably they've been there. These units, these Marines, as you know, the future fight is going to require Marines at the lower level to make higher level decisions, or decisions that are going to affect higher levels, especially with EABO, things like that. So we're talking about it. The Marines, service members in general, need to war game, need to know how to war game. The benefit of that, not only does it increase like their critical thinking, I'm sure there's games out there and with the Marine Corps University developing new games and the games that they currently have out, developing tactics and, like you said, things that are going to affect the bigger scope of things from the tactical level, to the strategic level. Yeah, I think more wargaming needs to occur, even if it's not, hey, sign up for this tournament. Just like, and that's why I think the board game is great. Like, if units can have that in their office or their company office or wherever Marines have it in their barracks room, and they can just play. Hey, let's play this. I think they would enjoy that. Compared to just a regular board game or some kind of like whiteboard or pen and paper wargaming, Kriegspiel type thing. I think they would enjoy that more and get more out of it because it's competitive as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like the competitive nature of it. It's like in terms of how are we going to get more Marines involved, I think the answer definitely lies in the approaching the Marines' competitive nature. So you and I saw Mar Admin, Top Tactics, and that brought in a lot of people. Is that what needs to keep happening, do you think? Do we need more Mar admins announcing these types of things? Or is it going to be a little more on us, these guys that have now participated? We're coming up on 1 year of having been a member of the MCU Wargaming Cloud to try to bring more guys in that aren't just going to sign up for a tournament and then give up halfway through, but are actually going to find their way all the way through to the end.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the like we start with advertising it in a Mar admin, right? And then just a little bit more just exposure to Marines with this specific event, even, right? The Top Tactics, right? The Flashpoint and the Joint Tactics Arena. And like, hey, you get an opportunity to go to the modern day Marine, worst case scenario, you get to go see all the cool stuff there. Yeah, like, I just think it needs to get out there, more publicity. I guess that's what I was looking for. More publicity on this. Units get it. Maybe, hey, every unit can send X amount of seats, X amount of Marines. Yeah, I just think that it's very undiscovered right now. I don't know if that's the right word for that, but
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's inherent on the commanders. There's going to be an expectation and a requirement on commanders. Us on the reserve side, we have such limited time in order to do something like this, and it's something that I would then envy FMF commanders, where that's something you can routinely put on the calendar as this is something that I want to have done. Here are the resources, whether it's the board games themselves, whether it's access to the Marine Corps University Wargaming Cloud, and then it becomes this is what I want done. Show me that it's being done, and then now you're just inspecting what you expect to happen. And I think more and more leaders that are willing to do that in absence of a commander saying yes, go and do that is going to be the key to success.
Yeah, and I think this thing's only going to grow. Like you had mentioned earlier, there's a couple guys and who really know the games and the system and wargaming that have monopolized the top spots, right? So it'll be tough to dethrone them because they'll have the experience. But as more people become aware of this and the competition starts to thicken and it becomes way more competitive and more Marines are now applying and the tournament gets bigger and expands, I think there's probably a lot of undiscovered great minds out there and great tacticians, great wargamers that are out there that probably never even heard of this, never even heard of Top Tactics tournament, never heard of anything like this, the Commandant's Cup. So I think once it gets out there to them, and I think the interest is there, just getting it to them so that they're made aware of it. And then it could even go down to once this Joint Tactics Arena game comes out, right? Like a whole unit has it, they can do their own internal tournament or whatever competition. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'd like to see that for sure, right? Units having their own competition. I think that'd be a great indicator that enough of a foothold has been established that we can then just simply guide and give people the resources to keep it growing. There's always kind of this ebb and flow in Marine Corps history of wargaming, and it's hard to tell right now whether or not we're in an ebb or a flow. My guess is that it's a flow, but it's an opportunity for us to really sustain it so that it doesn't have to ebb. It can only grow. And we talked before about, like, I'm not afraid of competition. I like competition. I want to play the smarter guy, because if I beat him, I'll have learned something. I'll make myself better, right? If he beats me, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that he's learning something. Like, they're only going to make each other better. I'm not interested in getting people signed up to smack them around because they don't know how the game works. That's not fun. That's not competitive. That doesn't make any of us better. And I want to see it continue to make us better. I get the sense that eventually Tim is trying to create a wargaming season, almost like an athletic season, a football season. And I think the championship would be the Commandant's Cup. And I am guessing that the kickoff would be something like Top Tactics. Now, what I saw was a Top Tactics tournament, a War Plan tournament. So War Plan is a game built around World War II, and that has some incredibly detailed, dynamic, strategic, operational concepts that you get to play with. Some amazing battles that are out there that you get to employ. And it's actually made by Matrix Pro Sims, the same company that built the Flashpoint Campaigns Pro. So that's another cool resource that's out there. But that would be a second component of the season. I participated in the Napoleon at War tournament. And then finally, there was the preliminary and the finals for the Commandant's Cup. So that's 4 major tournaments as a part of a season. And I think it's interesting because you're looking at an introduction to kind of modern warfare with Company Commander Modern. You're looking at some of the historic warfare in World War II. And then but still with a lot of the similar operational concepts, integration of maneuver, air, maritime, like all that is still real. It all still contributes, more or less, depending on which battle that you are playing. But then you also have something like Napoleon at War. So now you're almost taking a step backwards that says, I'm not talking about integrating all these different concepts. I'm bringing you all the way back to like Moose Mus. Some of the just principles of warfare. Can you mass? Can you employ economy of force? Can you employ surprise, speed? Like all these different ideas, these principles of warfare boiled down to, you have cavalry, you have artillery, you have infantry. In what combination of those 3 things can you go and defeat the enemy in these historical situations? And then finally you have the Commandant's Cup, where you're starting to bring a lot of that together into a final competition. Does that feel like a good wargaming season? Is it missing something? Does it have too much of something else?
No, I think that's good because I was also a bad participant in the Napoleon at War. I signed up for it. I quickly realized, like, I am not interested in this because I didn't see the value of it. It wasn't until talking to you where you're like, hey, it's not really about the tactical aspects. I'm like, I'm never going to employ cannons, you know? I'm never going to have cavalry, so why am I playing this game? So I didn't get the value out of it, and I didn't realize the value until you had talked to me about it, about the different types of thinking. So yeah, I think I like the idea of the season and finding which games or scenarios even would be good for, you know, game 1, game 2, game 3, or whatever levels of the season it's going to go through. Yeah, I think, or even have it broke down to individual type things. That'd probably be something Tim works out. But like I said, I wasn't super interested in the Napoleon thing, and it was just too slow of a pace for me. I don't think I gave it a chance to learn to appreciate the value, which I can see other people doing. Like, hey, I'm not interested in Napoleon at War. I only want to do Company Commander Modern. So allowing them the opportunity to just focus on one thing that really applies to what they're actually going to be doing, and what applies to them. Because like I said, doing Company Commander Modern, I learned so much, like just on the infantry, being an infantryman side of learning the capabilities of these weapon systems, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of benefits, the offset benefits that you're not really anticipating to get out of it initially, but I ended up learning about all these weapon systems, all these different things, counter battery radar, all these different things that like I ended up going down some rabbit holes on Odin. So
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly it is one of the specific purposes of wargaming. Right? That is PME wargaming in a nutshell. Like it's easy to look at historical examples. Like what was Napoleon thinking when he's doing X, Y, or Z? You know, what was Stonewall Jackson thinking about when he was doing A, B, and C? But for that modern warfare type concept, like PME, like I need you to play this game because I need you to know the capability of the enemy weapon systems. If you don't understand that capability, how in the world could you ever properly plan your assault? You're not even going to know how to establish an assault position if you don't realize that that position is easily within range of the enemy's guns, right? Like that is a fundamental piece that you need to understand before you can even begin your planning, and that's important.
yeah, and I think wargaming is because again, seeing the stuff on range 410 alpha, range 400 out here, 29 palms, the guys don't understand that. Like, hey, ZBD09 coming right at you. I don't know what that
I don't
is
know
or
what that
what it
means.
does, and so them being able to learn about that, I think wargaming, low impact, low cost, but huge payout, huge benefit for Marines, for units, and then applying this to real world conflicts, future conflicts that we may be a part of.
No, I like it. We already kind of talked about like what like this podcast is designed to expose more and more Marines to this concept. It's to let people know what's out there. It's to get them involved in trying it out and discovering that they're learning something, discovering that they're enjoying it, and watching it grow within the Marine Corps. So the homework that you and I have, I think, would then be, you know, what are you going to do with the unit that you have nearest you, right? So you're at TTCG. Is Captain Tabera going to be able to spearhead the TTCG Fight Club? You're going to be able to get some of those dudes roped into like, hey guys, our schedule is freaking swamped. This is our time off. Let's do a tournament on this date. Who's in? And you just try to drag a couple of those dudes. Is that something that you feel like you can try to knock out?
Yeah, because especially being at TTCG, we have really dudes who are super technical in every weapon system. I mean that's what we do, right? We bring the units through, we train them through ITX, who know the ins and outs of every weapon system, understand the tactical level, how to employ all this stuff, all the way up to battalion level events, right? But then it's like, all right, well let's put all this knowledge into against a thinking, moving, breathing, actioning enemy, someone who may have the same training as you or may not. So yeah, I think it's possible. There's definitely some guys there that I already want to rope in.
And man, I think you do. And you guys are in a unique spot for two reasons. One, because you've got McTogg across the street. And I think talking about sparking that little bit of a competition between the two, get TCOM to moderate, right? You say, hey, like, or excuse me, MACTAF Training Command, right? Like whoever owns the two of you, I forget the actual acronym
Yes.
that owns you guys. But the idea would be, you know, there should be a champion. There should be a reigning champion between you two. Monthly, you guys get together and hash it out, and whoever wins that tournament gets to wear the belt for the next month. Like I think that'd be a really cool 29 Palms specific like. You don't have anywhere to go that's fun anyway, so you might as well pull out the board, right? Roll some dice, have a good time that way.
Yeah, and there's already a rivalry between
Yeah,
TTCG and McTogg. It's like
as there should
McTogg's
be.
like we're the brainchilds, and then they're like you got to do these are the great tactics, and then us at TTCG like, well, we're on the ground, and that may or may not be the best way to do this. Like,
Yeah.
so it's already that back and forth. So I'm sure wargaming, bright minds in both places.
Yeah, and that's my idea too. So I'm going to be trying to move on to a new unit, or at least a new job, whether that's in 123 or if I can sneak into 25th Marines to see what that side of the country looks like. But the idea is start getting a couple of dudes, start creating. You had already laid a little bit of groundwork, a 123 fight club. So we'll start trying to get some of the local unit fight clubs. I would love it if TTCG and McTogg eventually had like a dude whose entire job was to sit down with some of the XOs or sergeants major or whomever they can get to listen and be like, hey, there's this thing. It's wargaming. If you can send me some dudes, I will show you what this has to offer. And we can be a resource for you guys and just be a representative of the Marine Corps University all the way on the other side of the country in 29 Palms. So I think that'd be a really cool thing to achieve at some point.
Yeah, and especially with I think that's real. That's feasible. I think McTog, that's all they do is Wargame.
Yeah.
They teach stuff and they do stuff, but a lot of their stuff is relatable to that. But yeah, for us at TTCG, like when we're working, but in our downtime, it's a lot of downtime to master our craft or get into something, go to schools, do Wargaming, things like that. So.
I love it. So the next slate of interviews, I'm going to spearhead a lot of those because I know you're hooking and jabbing with TTCG. We've got a great lineup of competitors from the Commandant's Cup. We're going to have the reigning champs on at one point. I'm still trying to get the 13th MU commander, Colonel Stuart Glenn, to see if he's able to come on. But we're going to have some real pipe hitters be able to join us on this podcast and keep it going around. Victor, really appreciate you willing to give up your time with me on this, and I'm really looking forward to keeping this going, try to get some real legs on this podcast so that we can get more and more guys interested in wargaming and making both FMF and MFR the premier warfighting organizations they're meant to be.
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, thanks for having me, and looking forward to doing some stuff and watching the other interviews that you have. Recommend trying to get the polls, too.
Yep.
I think that would bring a unique perspective.
Yep, they're on the list for sure. All right, brother. Till next time.
All right, sir. Have a good one.